Welcome to Private Club Radio, your weekly source for industry education, news and discussion. Broadcasting from Tampa, Florida, ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Gabriel Aloisi.
My featured guest today is Toni Shibayama. She's the Chief Risk Officer specializing in insurance, HR, safety, and wellness for the ISU, S&K Financial and Insurance Services. Toni attended the University of Southern California Marshall School of Business. She holds a senior professional designation in human resources and certified wellness and benefits advisors and insurance licenses in California and Arizona. For the past 15 years, she has served countless businesses and specializes in private clubs to help get products and services from healthy, safe, and productive people. Toni has been retained on numerous occasions by business owners to train supervisors and employees in the areas of equal opportunity, leadership, anti-harassment, goals, communications, being lawsuit-free, diversity, performance management, and spirit in the workplace and innovations. Toni, welcome to Private Club Radio.
Thank you for having me, Gabe.
Toni, you've got a really cool, interesting approach that I've never heard from another insurance person. Your advice is don't use it. So, Toni, can you explain what that means?
Absolutely. Well, year after year with clients, whether it be delivering health insurance or property liability, employer liability insurance policies, and workers' comp, the frustration was I hated to give bad renewals. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, once you're giving a renewal, it's too late. We're looking back. And so really out of frustration for not only myself, but also for our clients is really more of a proactive approach of, well, why are you getting an increase? What's happening? What's the cause and effect here? And literally it was, we have injuries. We have unhealthy employees. We have unhappy people and they're suing us. So kind of looking at it from a financial aspect and understanding where the underwriters were coming from, we just kind of said, we hate giving you bad news. Let's try to, for the next 10, 11 months, do everything that we can do possibly. So that way, next year when we do deliver you something, we don't have to give you that bad news. And so really it spawned out of, yes, we have to have the necessary evil, which is insurance. The fun thing that we like to do is make sure you have the right coverage, but you're using it appropriately, and we're not having to basically give you bad renewals year after year because we don't like it as well. So that's really where we kind of started. The risk management start of it was out of frustration for not only ourselves, but for our clients as well, too, for the bottom line.
Sure. So let's go ahead and talk about the importance of hiring the best team members, because I'm sure that's where a lot of this starts. Why is that so vital today more than ever, Toni?
Well, at a club, your members are buying an experience filled with memories, and being part of that is having the right team members. And, not only having people that can do the job, because a lot of people can do the job, but do they understand the club culture? Do they enjoy being in hospitality? I hear this all the time. This person is a great employee. They do their job, but they can't work the weekends. They can't work the holidays. And, they're just not a people person. And I just always tell them, I'm going, well, do you see a mismatch here? I think we deserve the best. I think we need someone who's drinking the Kool-Aid, who wants to be part of a bigger club culture and part of our team. And if somebody is just purely just doing the job, but doesn't really care about the club or its members, then we're going to have a mismatch. And so, it's critical that you have the best team members. And really, I tell people all the time, take your time in hiring. If you don't hire correctly, it's drama for everybody, right? It's a waste of time, money, and energy, but also a drain to your department. And I do tell clubs all the time that finding the right person takes some time. But also, too, if you do find that you didn't hire the right person, that's okay. Right. There's somebody else that's going to fit our needs, and don't settle. But really, it is, do you want to be part of our club, the fabric, part of our hospitality, our core values, our mission? and really providing the best member experience possible. And, if you close your eyes and you look at who you have in your team, if you think half of those folks shouldn't belong there, then we have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, hiring the best team members, I really think is critical to any club, any company, any organization, and really setting people off on the right foot. So again, I just always tell people, I think that there's no room for settling. And there's a lot of people that would love to be at your club. So let's go find them.
I love that advice. And I've had that experience firsthand with people that worked for me where they just weren't the right fit. And I kind of just let them hang there, and it ended up causing more and more problems down the line. And it kind of
Absolutely.
spiraled. And so it's better to just nip it in the butt as soon as you recognize that it's not a fit. I love that advice. So we often survey our members at private clubs, but we never or hardly ever survey the staff. But you think that should change. Why is that, Toni?
I do two things when I ask my clients, what is the pulse? Where is your club? I know that we do a lot of, member surveys and, how do they like the food and the spa and the golf experience and tennis experience. But in regards to our teams, our department heads, how are we driving? There's two that I'd love to have. There's one called a compliance survey, and it really is just how are we doing? Are people happy? Do they think things are fair? Could I be losing my top three executives at any given time? Am I on the verge of a bunch of lawsuits or fraudulent workers' comp claims? So, I tell people all the time, it's great if we can formalize and do an employee survey or compliance survey. But also, too, do you have a all hands meeting with employees? Um, Communication is key. In any organization, what I tend to see is if we don't have communication, then we lose some of that energy, the core values, the goals. And are we sitting down with the employees and telling them thank you, showing appreciation, showing them here's where the club is going? A lot of times, too, I hear people going, well, I heard the clubhouse is going to be closed down for 4 years. I'm going, who did you hear that from? Well, it's just through the grapevine. So I tell people all the time, if you should have some all hands meetings to get the pulse. How are people doing? Do they think things are fair? Are they being paid adequately? Do they understand your benefits program? I know a lot of clubs give tremendous benefits, and we don't necessarily kind of toot our horn, which I really do think you need to, but also to show appreciation to those that have been very loyal, long-term, rising stars within the pack, but also to showcase some of our new members as well, too. So I do tell people all the time, where are we? Are people happy? Are they disgruntled? Could we see a rash of issues coming up in the next 6 months? And so that's where I say, take a pulse in regards to where are we with our team? Are we happy? Are we working well together? Do we understand the common goal and where we're going as a club as well, too?
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, it's amazing what you find out once you actually start asking the questions. So that's one thing. And then if people don't have a vision of where they're going, it's just hard for them to, everyone has to be, aligned on the same team, both the members and the staff. So that's really well said, Toni. I know, Toni, that you're a strong believer in the importance of investing in managers. Can you give us your thoughts on that?
I spend a lot of time having the great opportunity of meeting with a lot of clubs. And, one thing I do ask people is, have you invested in your managers? And they kind of look at me like I have three eyeballs. And I say, well, we assume people, because they've been here for 20 years, know how to formally hire, train, do orientations, coach, evaluate, discipline, and ultimately sometimes fire people. And I will say, do your managers, leaders, mid-level managers, do they know how to do that? And they look at me and they go, I have no idea. And I said, well, maybe we should give them the tools. I said, because they could be your greatest asset or your biggest exposure.
Yeah.
They do say that most people leave an organization not because of the organization, but because of their direct manager. And
Sure.
so, when I come in and I do kind of an evaluation, I always sympathize with the manager because it is very difficult being a manager and no one's ever given them the proper tools to do it correctly. So
Right.
I don't fault them. I usually just say, you know what, we've given you some tools. Now we just have to sharpen them. And I will always be surprised when people go, that's why we do that. And I go,
Hmm.
absolutely. Or they go, oh, I shouldn't have been asking those 20 questions at interviews. No, you shouldn't have. And again, it's kind of one of these like revealing things as far as, yeah, yes, we want you to make sure everyone comes in, clocks in correctly, and is not drunk. But there's so much more that goes to that as well too.
Right.
And so again, it's kind of the hiring and firing, but also to the motivation, setting goals, setting action items, as the one club mentioned. And I just always tell them, I go, this is the fun part of being a manager. You don't always have to be that stern parent who's always disciplining, but let's
Right.
give you some tools, because I always tell them if you hire correctly, kind of going back around, is if you hire correctly, you're not having to discipline as much. If
Yeah.
you hire correctly, you're not having to give negative reviews or terminating a lot of people because we've kind of done all that work up front. And then we just kind of make your department sing, where we just kind of go, okay, we're here. Let's get to that next level. And so, I think all managers, kind of like with safety, we need reminders, right? It's like there's a reason why we always have to go to first aid and get recertified because we forget.
Hmm.
And so for managers, I just always tell them, don't worry about it. Here's a refresher course. We know it's difficult being a manager. Here are some tools to help you get, retain, and encourage the best team you can possibly have. Because I know that coming from an HR side, most managers kind of cringe when they think, oh, she's not going to let me do any of these things. And I go, no, actually, no, I want to fire people if we need to. But here's the process. But I want you to retain, recruit, and keep the absolutely best employees. That's my job as well, too.
What are some of your tips, Toni, for being a good interviewer? Do you have any resources or anything that general managers could use in finding the right talent for their club?
There's one document, and I'm kind of odd. I have a love affair with job descriptions. I tell people this, and they think I'm very odd. With job descriptions, I tell people that it's what the job is, what it entails. You will need some certifications. You will need to lift, push, pull. Right? You may have to have a certain degree in certain things. You may need English comprehension, and it's not that I'm picking on you. It's not that I'm being racist or I'm saying I don't want anybody over the age of 90. It's just this is what the job entails.
Hmm.
Okay. I think that a lot of people, when they hire, they go with their gut feeling.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, please don't go with your gut. I want I want some actual,
Yeah.
where did they work at before? Tell me a time where, you had an Easter brunch and you had, 40 extra people come. How did you handle that? Versus, do you like multitasking? Have
Hmm.
you been in hospitality? Really, when you do have that opportunity to sit down with the interviewee, if you don't have crafted questions based on the job that are open-ended questions, we're not really doing ourselves the due diligence of finding out if this person is the right fit. So, take that time, take the job description, here are 3 misses that we had at that last job. Or here's some difficult situations. I'm going to bring this up at the interview and see if they know how to handle it.
Yeah.
If this is something that they've been used to, a stressful situation. So I do tell people all the time, I said, one is giving the person, here's the job. You may have to be outside, inside. Your hands might have to be in water 24
Hmm.
hours a day. So that way we're not shying from the actual job responsibilities. We're being very clear And we're also setting expectations just in case we do actually hire this individual. It's perfectly clear in regards to what is expected of them.
Yeah.
So
well said.
love job descriptions.
Yeah, that's a good one. What other helpful hints do you have for new general managers, Toni?
Well, this is a tough one. You could be a new GM replacing someone after a glorious 30-year career, or you might be the fifth GM in 4 years. And so I go, well, in any situation, being a new GM, there's going to be a lot of responsibility. All eyes are going to be on you. But what I do tell new GMs in working with them is take inventory. Take inventory. Obviously, you're going to be getting feedback from people, getting information from boards and everything. But take an inventory of kind of the good, the bad, the ugly. Dive into some of the employee files. Talk, meet, and greet who you currently have. And I always tell them, take your time. Take your time. I know that your job is to turn around the ship, right, as they say. And I said, I know, but with your people, some people have been here for 9 months. Some employees have been here for 30 years. So, have your vision and goal and your plan, communicate that to everybody that's involved. And then I always tell them, take a step back and see who is on board. There may be a number of folks, or maybe a couple that go, you know what, I've been doing it this way. I feel there's no need to change. Well, with those folks, you may categorize them as I call little HR projects. Okay?
Yeah.
And what I mean by projects is we just take our time.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you have a new POS system, you have a new system in regards to the member experience, we're going to heighten it, and so therefore, here are going to be our touch points. If you have some people that just push back, then we're just saying, okay, well, we're giving you chance 1, chance 2, chance 3. Gosh, we really want you. This is the new wave. This is our new procedure. It's not based on your race, creed, color, national origin. It has nothing to do with that. It's just here are the new expectations. And we have clearly documented that here's the reason why we need to make some employment changes. I also, too, ask GMs, do you think you can rehab this house? Mm-hmm. Meaning, is this a total teardown? Or can we work with this individual? Mm-hmm. Maybe they know all the board of directors, or maybe they have everyone's, cell phone in their back pocket. Is this someone we can rehab because they are an asset to the club, but maybe not in this particular job? They've been with us for 25 years, or they're the funny guy that's in the locker room. Is there any place that we might fit them into our organization? And so sometimes we'll kind of get a little bit creative there as well, because I always tell people, I go, there's 20 steps before we terminate somebody, 20 different steps. And I always want to explore all of those things before a termination, because when you do decide to terminate, that's when it gets a little scary, and that's when the risk goes up. But I do tell people that as long as you set expectations, the communication of here's where we're going, here are 3 things that everybody needs to have under their belt. And you are requiring everybody to live by this, and you want to keep and retain the best folks, and you don't want to settle, because also too, a lot of times with new GMs, they're waiting for this new GM to literally make a difference. And maybe sometimes they go, ooh, we didn't take care of this 5 years ago. We're hoping this new GM does it. Now, it's not fair to this new GM, but a lot of times that's what I tend to see. I want this person to take inventory, take a look, see who's on board, and make changes as necessary.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Toni, you've put together a list of the top 5 risk areas for clubs. Can you take us through that list? So
I mentioned it before, but one is hire correctly. use of job descriptions, love, love, love. Tell me what the essential functions are. No ifs, ands, and buts. What am I going to be doing? If I'm required to work holidays and weekends, that is not a negotiable. Make sure I know that. Okay. So one is really hire correctly and take your time. Okay. Also, too, most employers have an introductory period. You have your 30 or 60 or 90. I call this the dating phase. And maybe we hire somebody who just is not a fit. That's okay. They're probably miserable and you're probably miserable. So, you know what? Take this opportunity and this time. Not to say they have guaranteed employment after 90 days, but it's just a little bit harder. There's more emotions involved. So, and most managers know if it's a right fit in the first couple of weeks or so,
Sure.
maybe after the first month. And I always tell them, I know you don't want to get back out there and interview again. I know you don't. But heart of hearts, looking at the job description, if there are too many unhappy faces, they're just not the right fit. And I don't know if you want to spend the next 4 years retraining somebody who should already know the job. So
Right.
that would be my number one is hire correctly. Two is honest documentation. Um, you know, an employee file should really reflect a true and accurate depiction of this person's work. Um, I am always flabbergasted at, you know, we get a lot of phone calls. Hey, Toni, we want to fire this person. I go, great, let's do it. I go, however, before you cut that last check, I got 20 questions for you. And this is when kind of everything starts screeching to a halt. And I'll go, grab the file folder, or you've got your web employee file there. Tell me what it says. And I'll say, perfect, great, wonderful, exceeds expectations. Oh, they're employee of the month last year. I'm going, so wait, you're telling me a different story here. Versus us being, I just always tell the human nature is we don't like to ruffle feathers. We don't like discomfort. And I think we need to get away from, oh, I'm telling this person they're bad, but versus more of this is a coaching opportunity. I'm not making it personal. I'm wanting them to be a better employee. And if I'm a good manager, I'm going to be honest. So my second one would be honest documentation and honest conversations, because I do see a lot of managers that kind of suffer in silence. They close the door and they pull out their hair. And I hear this, I can't wait for them to retire. I go, oh, okay, that's great. Well, how old are they? They're 42 years old. I'm going, well, we've had a long time. So, right. And then I'll go, well, what does it say in the last review? Or did you coach and counsel them? And I said, if I was your employee and I thought, I'd really want you to tell me, or I'd really love the initiative of you saying, coming from a good place, I'm going to work with you. I hired you, I'm going to work with you, versus being blindsided. That's one I do not like, because that's where risk and the impact that it has on insurance. If you fire me, you let me go, and it's a total surprise, I'm going to think it's something else. And so honest documentation would be my second one. My third would be wage and hour. Everyone gets a paycheck, and just make sure you're doing everything possible to be in compliance. The three things I just always tell people, just make sure that, vacation, it's one of these things that it's owed to me. So I've accrued it, it's owed to me. Make sure that's being calculated correctly. Make sure those are actually salary employees or exempt employees, or actually should be exempt employees. And the third one is independent contractors, which I know is the hot button right now in the club industry. But I just always tell people that, wage and hour claims over here in California, they're horrific. But throughout the country, everyone just needs to kind of, stop the car, open up the hood, and just make sure things are compliant in that area right there. My fourth would be aging workforce. I see a lot of very loyal club employees, so much so that, it's almost like, well, he's been here for 35 years. He's been here for 32 years. This gentleman in the kitchen's been here for 40 years. And they absolutely are loyal, dedicated to the club. It may have been their first and only job. However, when I look at risk, I'll say, are they still doing the lifting, the pushing, the pulling? And is this going to create a situation where, this person has from head to toe trauma and issues down the road? And so I think if there are physical requirements, or having the discussion with your loyal employees, is prepare the workplace, prepare for the job, and prepare your employee as well too. The last thing I want to do is have an employee that is injured because they really shouldn't be doing a specific job just due to the physical requirements. A lot of times I tend to see that we just kind of pretend it's not happening, versus more of like a family member. If I had, my father is going to be turning 80 next year.
Mhm.
And if I had him, putting up the Christmas lights and, throwing big bags of trash over his shoulder and everything, as my father, would I say, you know what, here's a lift, here's a dolly, here's a push cart, or, maybe some other folks need to do some of the heavy lifting. Can you be in charge of some of these lower physical requiring jobs?
Yeah.
Not to say you can't do them, but just from the risk standpoint of that as well. And my fifth, it would be, can you just stop and do a quick audit? And what I mean by that is, I know sometimes we get so busy and, are we redoing the clubhouse? Are we redoing the greens? We have these amazing big member guest events, and it's just the hustle of every day. But sometimes people are put to a halt because they're being sued, or there's a government audit, or, their insurance policy doubled and it's up $1 million. By that point, it's sometimes too late. So I do ask some of my clients, and I always tell them, what keeps you up at night? Well, maybe you should just triple check to make sure that those things are in order. So when I mean by stop and do an audit, it could be everything from, do you got safety in order? Is that good? If OSHA were to swing on by, would they close you down, or would they be, you're doing good? Job descriptions, employee manuals, our payroll processes, reviews, wage and hour. The top three things that keep you up at night, I tell clubs, well, let's just stop, do a quick check. It's not going to be 100%, but it will give you peace of mind. Also, too, you can report back to the powers that be, some of the owners of the club, the board, and saying, did a cross check, everything looks good. So that way they have peace of mind as well, too. So those would be my top five. And again, as I tell my clients, I want to give you, renewals that reflect, that aren't going to kill your budget.
Mhm.
I want you to have the best employees. I want you to have healthy employees. I don't want any injuries if possible, but all that does take a little bit of work, and also to a lot of prevention as well too. But that's okay. You just have a good partner and you put certain things in place.
Yeah. Got to be proactive. That's for sure. Toni, tell us about some of the service that you can offer our listeners.
Well, a lot of times what I tend to see right now, what the hot button is training, training, training. Training managers so that they know how to be managers is a big one, and really more club specific, because clubs are, one, we're wonderful, nice people. We're in hospitality, and sometimes we're too nice. We don't like to give criticism or coaching, those types of things. So one would be the best practices of being a manager. Also giving an HR 101, just a quick overview of, if you hear this, see this, what should you do? Also, to any sort of audits that may come your way, where you just need to make sure that within your state, federal and state, you're compliant in those areas. We have a lot of resources as well. And last but not least is insurance coverage as well too.
Sure.
So those are all the things that we do. But really, at the end of the day, I think that once you have a pretty good foundation, you've got a good GM, you've got your core values, your communication. Then on top of that, you have a really good team. You have your policies in place, and everyone's complying with those policies. That's when we can have fun.
Yeah.
And that's when it's going to kind of cross over onto that member experience because, gosh, we're having such a good time. All of my employees get it. They want to be here. They're doing a good job. They're happy. My managers are happy. Wouldn't you love to join our club? And so that's where we ultimately like to see our clients at that level.
That's awesome. What's the best way to get in touch with you, Toni?
Best way to get a hold of us is probably via the web. So it's just sk-insurance.com. You'll see some information on there, and we'll put together some white papers for your audience as well too. Just some hints, some tools, some templates that might be helpful for all of your club loyal followers as well too.
That's awesome. Yeah, you've got one for workers' comp and you've got one on hiring the best. And so we will be sure to provide those resources there in the show notes on privateclubradio.com under your interview. So Toni, thank you so much for coming on. Awesome stuff. And we really appreciate you sharing your wisdom here on Private Club Radio.
Thank you for having me, Gabe.
Private Club Radio is brought to you by the Private Club Agency, the premier marketing and consulting firm dedicated to helping clubs increase and retain their membership. Visit privateclubagency.com to learn more.